Finally, I felt like I was beginning to get lucky. Now that the old man had finally left, everything seemed to be coming together. But given how everyone else was behaving, it was ridiculous to consider how I felt. Not long after his father's death, my husband, no, ex-husband, was saying things that were utterly demeaning. His father had helped us so much, especially after we were married, and now he was talking so coldly about his passing. "Do you even understand what you're saying?" I questioned him. He retorted, "I understand perfectly. The land and wealth you inherited will be taken by me. A good deal, haven't you? This is the moment I've been waiting for." He had been anticipating this moment, of course. It was almost unbelievable to me that he was speaking these things at this very moment. He seemed eager to get everything, as though he couldn't wait for his father to die. "I could never do something like that," I replied, trying to calm myself, but it was no use. He didn't even believe me. "Bluff all you want, but it won't change anything," he sneered, throwing something at me. "What's this?" I asked, picking it up. It was a divorce paper, already signed. "You can't do anything without me. So now I'm going to take advantage of your fortune," he said, his words like a slap to my face. "Wait, what if I refuse?" I said, trying to hold on to something, anything. "Are you stupid?" He laughed cruelly. "What other option do you have besides divorce?" It hit me hard. To him, this was just an opportunity. Everything up to now had been a lie, an illusion. He didn't even know who I really was. "What are you doing?" he asked, watching me stand up. "What does it look like?" I said coldly. "I'm leaving this house." "You'll regret this," he warned me. "That's what I should be saying," I replied, my voice firm. "You're helpless without me." "We'll see about that," he said, barely hiding his anger. "Your company deals with mine, doesn't it?" "My company?" I asked, confused. "You'll find out soon enough," he muttered. "And don't worry about the divorce paper. I'll handle it myself." With that, I walked out the door. I filed for divorce immediately and then called his company. "It's me," I said to the person on the other line. "The project is canceled and all contracts up to now are terminated." There was a moment of stunned silence on the other end. The truth was, I was no longer the woman he thought I was. I was the head of a company with 7,000 employees. And now that things had come to this point, I wasn't holding back. I had to admit, I was curious about what he would do next. I had my own cards to play now, and it was only a matter of time before he realized who he was really dealing with. I am Jessica Scott, and I had just turned 39 not long ago. It felt strange to think of myself as old as I sat there, lost in thought. I heard someone calling my name. It was Justin, my husband. "What are you doing sitting around here?" he asked. "If you're bored, you could at least clean the house." I sighed softly. Things weren't always like this. When we first met, it wasn't like this at all. I met Justin a year before last year, and at that time, I had no real interest in marriage. In fact, it felt more like I was married to my job. But somehow, I ended up marrying him. It all started with my father. No matter how many times you try, I have no intention of marrying, I had told him at the time. But my father was stubborn. He kept insisting that Justin was a good man, and he promised that I'd understand if I met him. Every day, my father would bring it up again and again, but I knew what he was doing. It was his strategy to get me to meet Justin. "Don't you want to meet him yet?" my father asked again one day. "No," I replied flatly. It felt like just a month of back and forth, and as usual, My father tried to persuade me to meet Justin. Look at his photo, at least. Then you can decide, he insisted. Fine, I said. I'll look at it. But that's all. Where's the photo? I asked. In your study, my father replied, as always. I went to my father's study on the first floor to get the photo, but just as I was about to reach for it, I heard a thud. My heart dropped as I rushed to check. There, I found my father lying face down on the floor. Father, what happened? I shouted in panic. My mother, hearing the noise, quickly arrived. Even in such a crisis, she was strangely calm. Jessica, call an ambulance, she said without hesitation. I quickly called, and within 15 minutes, the ambulance arrived. My father was unconscious, but his heart was still beating. They rushed him to the hospital, and the doctors began treatment immediately. My father had a stroke. A blood vessel had temporarily blocked, causing him to lose consciousness. Father, I'm so sorry, I whispered, guilt washing over me. Who could have known this would happen? This was no laughing matter. Fortunately, there was no serious concern with his health, so he was able to return home soon. However, my father had all the risk factors: high blood pressure, smoking, drinking. The doctor warned him to take better care of himself. No more alcohol or cigarettes, the doctor said sternly. But those are my pleasures, my father protested, as if it was someone else's problem. What if you collapse again? I asked, my voice filled with worry. My father just shrugged. He had always loved drinking, especially wine he'd collected from all over the world, and it was his pride. But his health was at risk, and yet he wouldn't listen. Then he made a proposition. If you say so, I have a proposition too, he said, looking like he was enjoying the situation. What proposition? I asked, not sure where this was headed. This isn't really the time for negotiations, I said, annoyed. If you want me to listen, you'll have to accept my condition, he said. What's that condition? I asked. Meet the man I want to introduce you to, he said casually. I couldn't believe it. If this was the only way to get him to live longer, then I was willing to meet this man. Okay, I said. I'll meet him. Good, my father said, looking satisfied. I'm glad you said that. My mother, who had been in the kitchen, wore a look that seemed to say, Here we go again. There's no time to waste, my father said. I'll call him now. No, I said, not right now. When something is decided, you should act quickly. That's our family motto. We've never had that motto before, I replied, bewildered. Well, it's one I just came up with, he said with a smile. It was hard to believe that my father, the president of a large corporation with thousands of employees, could be this way. If his employees knew how he was acting right now, they'd be shocked. As promised, the man arrived. Sorry for the sudden invitation, my father said, ushering him inside. This is Justin, a promising figure from a company we do business with. Nice to meet you, Justin said politely. I'm Jessica Scott, I said, offering him my hand. And that was how I met Justin. Despite it being our first meeting, we got along well right from the start. We talked about work, and it turned out that my father and Justin had met at a president's social. As we spoke, my father proudly told Justin all about me, and then Justin asked a question that caught my attention. I heard from President Scott that you were incredibly popular in your school days, he said. You turned down boys left and right. Huh, is that true? My father? I asked, shooting him a glare. Don't glare at me like that. he said quickly. You've been saying strange things again. What are you talking about? I asked, frustrated. Well, it's mostly true, he admitted, though I may have exaggerated a little. I rolled my eyes. You really shouldn't believe everything he says, I muttered. He exaggerates a lot. Is that so? My father looked at me, clearly not convinced. A person who can't tell a lie from the truth isn't trustworthy. That's why a lie is sometimes necessary. What kind of convenient excuse is that? I responded, feeling even more fed up with him. After that, we had some drinks. Of course, my father stuck to a soft drink, but Justin had a few too many and soon became quite talkative, revealing a lot about his ambitions. I'm going to be rich, Justin slurred, his face flushed. Yeah, I'll live in a house like this one, and eventually, I'll become a president, by any means necessary. I raised an eyebrow. What exactly do you mean by that? Justin looked a bit confused as he tried to focus. I mean just what I said before. Before I could respond, Justin passed out right there, asleep on the couch, looking harmless enough despite his bold declarations. We decided to let him sleep in the guest room for the night. As I was cleaning up, my father came over, looking rather pleased with himself. So what do you think of him? He asked with a smile. I think he's an interesting person, I said honestly. He reminds me a bit of you, actually. My father raised an eyebrow. Really? I thought the same thing when we first met him. Plus, his father used to be the president of a small company, my father continued sadly. He passed away, but he's got a lot of potential. I see, I replied. I could understand why my father liked Justin. There was something captivating about him when he spoke. He had a certain charm, a confidence that was hard to ignore. The next morning, I went to wake Justin in the guest room. I was about to knock on the door when I heard him talking to someone on the phone. I paused, trying not to intrude. I understand. Things are going smoothly here, Justin said, his voice low and reassuring. Yes, don't worry. I'll make sure it gets done, he added. I waited until his phone call ended and then knocked on the door. Good morning, I said as I entered the room. Good morning, Justin replied, a bit flustered. Sorry about that. I was on the phone. Everything's fine, though. I smiled. No worries. Is everything okay? That was my mom, Justin explained, looking a little uncomfortable. She worries a lot. I see, I said, understanding. My family is a bit like that too. Justin looked a bit troubled for a moment, but then smiled faintly. He seemed like he wanted to say something but held back. Eventually, Justin and I ended up getting married. Even now, it still surprises me. But I was equally excited at the time. Everything felt right, like we were starting something new and fresh. However, little did I know, there were dark sides to Justin that I hadn't yet seen. At first, Justin seemed quite happy to be a part of our family. My father suggested that we live together, but we decided it would be nice to have our own space. So my father arranged an apartment for us, and we were both excited about our future. In the beginning, Justin was incredibly considerate, thoughtful even. Every day felt new, and our life together was exciting. But then something changed. Over time, Justin started becoming harsher with me. Did you clean properly? He asked one evening, his tone sharp. I just got back, I responded tired. No, not yet. Can't you even do that? He snapped, his eyes cold. It didn't take long for me to realize why Justin had begun acting this way. It turned out my father had said some things about me that weren't exactly true. He had told Justin that I was a woman who couldn't do anything for myself and that I was incompetent at work, a mere menial worker. I couldn't believe it. I immediately complained to my father. "Why would you say something like that?" I asked, upset. "It was just a joke," my father replied. But I wasn't having it. "Thanks to your joke, Justin's been treating me terribly. Please clear up this misunderstanding with him." My father looked surprised, almost taken aback by my reaction. No, sorry. I'll talk to him properly," he said, a little flustered. True to his word, my father seemed to explain everything to Justin soon after. Whether Justin was convinced or not, he seemed to return to normal, though he still looked at me with some doubt in his eyes. I couldn't stand it anymore. "Do you still believe what my father said?" I asked Justin one evening. He looked away, clearly uncomfortable. "Does it look like that?" he asked, his voice low. "The way you're looking at me, it feels like you're looking down on me." Hearing that, Justin immediately apologized. "I'm sorry. I didn't mean it like that." I wasn't thinking clearly. I could tell he genuinely felt bad. "It's okay," I said, trying to reassure him. "As long as you understand." Justin seemed to become more reserved after that. He stopped talking about work, perhaps out of consideration for me. He was still a good husband in many ways, but I started to feel like something was missing. He wasn't the man I thought I married, and that bothered me. About 6 months later, I received a call from my mother. My father had collapsed again and was rushed to the hospital. "Father?" I asked, panic rising in my chest. This time it seemed serious. My mother said, her voice tight with worry. "Is it that bad?" I asked, unable to keep the worry out of my voice. "He's stable for now, but you should come right away." I rushed to the hospital as fast as I could. When I arrived, my father was in surgery, and all I could do was pray that everything would be okay. "How is your father?" Justin asked when I called him. Of course, Justin was out golfing with clients. I couldn't reach him, so I left him a message. I said bitterly, "It'll be okay, right?" Justin said, trying to reassure me. "Maybe," I replied, my heart heavy. "But the surgery's been going on for hours, and I'm worried." Finally, the surgery ended, and I rushed to speak to the doctor. "How is my father?" I asked desperately. "The surgery was successful," the doctor said. "However, there may be some impairment in his speech. What's important now is what happens next." Hearing that there might be lasting damage, I felt uncertain about what to do, but Justin gently placed his hand on my shoulder. "It'll be okay," he said softly, looking at me with concern. In that moment, I felt truly grateful to be married to him, though I still couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't quite right. 2 days later, my father woke up. We were all anxious about the possibility of speech impairment, just as the doctor had mentioned, but it seemed like our fears were unfounded. "Father, you're okay?" I asked, my voice trembling. He looked at me relieved. "Jessica, I'm okay. I'm so sorry for causing all of you so much worry." I felt tears welling up in my eyes. I was so relieved to hear his voice again. Since my father would need to stay in the hospital for a while, we decided to visit him regularly. It was during one of these visits that my father confessed something to me. "Why would you do that after you had quit?" he said suddenly. I frowned, confused. "Sorry?" I asked, not understanding. Justin, who had been inviting me to join him after work, was becoming more involved in our family's issues than I had ever expected. I couldn't really say no to my son-in-law. That wasn't the issue, though. What bothered me was the second time my father hadn't quit drinking or smoking after everything that had happened. I thought he would listen to the doctor's advice, but Justin was involved too. I rushed home, determined to confront Justin. "Why did you let my father drink again?" I asked, my frustration bubbling up. "What's gotten into you all of a sudden?" Justin didn't even look up from his paperwork. "Your father seemed stressed from work," he replied almost dismissively. "If it led to this, then it was pointless to stop him now." "But we can't be sure it was the alcohol that caused it," I argued. "It might have been a contributing factor." Justin's face tightened, and he turned away. "What's the point of arguing about this now?" His voice was growing impatient. "Are you just trying to run away from this?" I could tell Justin was irritated, so he stormed off to his study without another word. From that day on, we barely spoke. When I tried to talk to him, he mostly ignored me. It was like he had shut me out completely. And yet, I could sense he was up to something. He was on the phone every night, often speaking in hushed tones. At first, I thought he might be cheating. But the more I listened, the more I realized it wasn't that. He would occasionally mention how things were going smoothly, or that something would happen soon. It all sounded oddly familiar, but I couldn't quite place why. Driven by a mix of suspicion and curiosity, I decided to go into his study when he wasn't around. It was a place I usually avoided, but something about the situation made me feel like I needed to know what was going on. I hadn't been in there since we got married. As I walked through the room, I noticed it was neat and orderly, just as Justin always kept it. Everything was in its place, except for one area, the desk. That's where I saw the clutter, with papers scattered across the surface. Among the mess, I saw pictures of my father and me, as well as various pieces of information about the company. I was confused. Why would Justin be keeping all of this? Before I could make sense of it, I heard the front door open. Justin was back. This was bad. In my panic, I knocked something off the desk as I rushed to put it back. That's when I noticed something written in red on the back of one of the photos. I couldn't make out the words, but I knew it was something important. And important. "What are you doing in here?" Justin's voice was sharp as he walked into the room. I stood frozen for a moment before stammering. "I was just thinking about cleaning up." "Who said you could come in here?" Justin demanded, his eyes narrowing. "Calm down, will you?" I said, trying to stay calm. "How can I stay calm? Did you see what's on the desk?" "Yes or no?" "I didn't see anything," I replied quickly, hoping I wasn't caught. "You've really done something terrible now," Justin said, his face darkening. He seemed especially concerned about the desk, as if what I'd seen was something he didn't want me to know. Justin locked the room's door and walked toward me, his steps heavy. "What are you going to do now?" he asked, his voice low. "I need to make you understand your place." "Stop it, Justin," I shouted, pulling my arm away from his grip. Justin grabbed my arm forcefully, his eyes cold with determination. "Listen to me. Don't go against me. If you do, you'll see hell." I was terrified. It was like I was facing a completely different person, someone I didn't recognize. He wasn't the man I had married. Shortly after, Justin changed the locks on the room to keep me out. That was when I realized that our relationship had changed completely. We were no longer husband and wife in any meaningful way. I even started to hesitate before speaking to him, unsure of what kind of response I would get. The only comfort I had was that my father was recovering. He was doing better, and that brought me some peace. One day, Justin asked me, "What's wrong? You don't seem like yourself today." I sighed, trying to hide how I was feeling. Maybe I ate too much, I muttered. Justin didn't seem to press further. How's work going? Is everything okay? Yes, yes, I replied. Thanks to you, I was able to secure a big contract. I didn't do much, I added quickly, trying to downplay my contribution. It's all thanks to your talent. Justin smiled, seeming pleasant enough. But I could tell it was all just a show, especially when my father wasn't around. He only put on a good face in front of him. The rest of the time, he ignored me, and his true nature came through in the little things. The pressure of dealing with Justin's behavior was starting to take a toll on me, both mentally and physically. Time passed quickly, and before I knew it, it was time to visit my father in the hospital again. I'm going to visit my father, I told Justin, expecting him to come with me. I'll pass. You go by yourself, he said casually. I was taken aback. But father is looking forward to seeing you. I went before, he replied dismissively. That should be enough. It takes time to go to the hospital, and I'm busy. I couldn't believe he would say something like that. However, fearing his anger if I disagreed, I gave in and went to visit my father alone. When I arrived, my father, despite his initial resistance to being hospitalized, had quickly befriended the other patients with his natural cheerfulness. Father, I found you. I called out as I approached him. It's time for your temperature check. With a smile, I said, we should head back. Is it really that time already? He said, getting up. Let's head back then, I agreed. After greeting the other patients in the lounge, we returned to my father's room. Justin isn't with you today? My father asked, looking around. He's a bit busy today, I replied. I see, my father said, though there was a hint of concern in his voice. I couldn't bring myself to tell him that Justin didn't want to visit. How have you and Justin been getting along lately? My father asked, his voice calm, but serious. Why do you ask all of a sudden? I asked, surprised. Just wondering, he replied softly. Are you getting along well? I hesitated before answering. It's okay, I said, though I didn't believe it myself. Didn't you ask me that before? I added. I've been forgetful lately. It's just you today, so that's good, my father said, almost as if he were relieved. What do you mean? I asked, curious. I have something important to talk to you about, he said, his tone serious. A chill ran down my spine. I had no idea what was coming next, but my father's words would change everything. What's the matter, father? I asked, anxiety rising in my chest. Listen carefully, he said, his voice heavy. I'm falling apart. It might be difficult for me to continue as president. So what about the company? I froze, unsure of where this conversation was heading. That's why I found someone suitable to take my place. Who? I asked, feeling a knot form in my stomach. Of course, it's you, Jessica, my father said. I couldn't believe my ears. Me? That's impossible. It's okay, my father reassured me. Everyone's new at first, but you've been by my side for years. You've seen how things are done. I've already discussed it with the other executives. But still, this is so sudden, I said, my mind racing. I've never seen my father plead like this before. He had always worked so hard to protect the company and our family. Maybe now it was my turn to protect him. Okay, I finally said, my voice trembling. I'll do it. That's my girl, my father said with a smile. In return, you need to take proper rest and get better. Okay, understood, I said. Don't tell anyone about you becoming president just yet, he added. Okay, I agreed. Not even Justin. My father's gaze was stern. Not even Justin, I repeated, confused. I didn't understand why he said that at the time, but I agreed. The reason behind his words became clear much later. Becoming president didn't mean I could just start giving orders. I had to relearn everything my father had been doing, and thankfully, the executives were knowledgeable and helped me along the way. 2 months passed. "You've been coming home late recently," Justin said one evening. "What are you doing?" "I've been given some extra work," I said, trying to downplay it. A younger employee quit recently. I wasn't sure if my lie would hold, but it seemed to work. Justin didn't question me any further. "I secured a huge contract today, and it's with your company," Justin said casually. I knew the contract had been finalized that day, but I didn't realize Justin was involved. "I hope you can learn something from this," Justin added, his tone a bit condescending. "Though I doubt you can." I couldn't help but feel irritated by his comment, and before I could think, I responded, "You won't know until you try." As soon as the words left my mouth, I realized how dangerous it was to provoke Justin further. I quickly backtracked, trying to salvage the situation. "Right, I forgot. There's no way I could do it anyway." As soon as I said that, I could tell Justin wasn't pleased, but I didn't want to make the situation worse. A few days later, we received a call from the hospital. My father's condition had suddenly taken a turn for the worse. The doctor said this night would be critical. I couldn't sit still any longer. I dropped everything and rushed to the hospital. When I arrived, my mother was already there, looking completely exhausted. "Jessica, how's father?" she asked, her voice filled with concern. "He's in his room right now," I said, trying to remain calm. Inside the room, my father was lying in bed with a respirator. He was barely breathing, and it felt like he could slip away at any moment. According to the doctor, a blood clot had formed in his brain again, and the situation was grave. "Is there any chance for surgery?" I asked, desperate for answers. The doctor hesitated before answering. The surgery was successful, but the impact on the brain was significant. There's a possibility he might not wake up from this. I felt resentment building in me. There was nothing I could do for my father, nothing I could change. Before this all happened, my father had refused surgery, worried about his memory issues and fearing he might forget his family. But now, he was slipping away, and it hurt more than I could express. Then, unexpectedly, my father woke up. The doctor seemed as shocked as I was. "Jessica," my father said softly, his voice weak. "Are you?" "Yes, I'm here," I whispered, bending closer to him. "Listen carefully to what I'm about to say," he continued, his breathing shallow. "Be careful of Justin." I froze, not understanding what he meant. "What do you mean?" "In my studies drawer, there's an envelope." "Look at it," my father said, his voice barely above a whisper. "I'm sorry for everything." Before I could say anything, his breathing grew weaker, and soon he passed away. The darkness that followed was overwhelming. "Are you okay?" my mother asked, sounding worried, but I was numb. "Yeah, I just need to calm down a bit," I muttered. "I need to call Justin too." I tried calling Justin, but he didn't answer. He wasn't responding, and I felt a sinking feeling in my chest. When I got home, Justin was acting as though nothing had happened. "Why the rush?" Justin asked, looking at me with mild indifference. "Why didn't you answer your phone?" "I was a bit busy," he said nonchalantly. "So what happened?" I asked, my voice trembling. Father passed away just now at the hospital. Justin looked down, trembling slightly. His reaction was strange, but before I could question it further, he excused himself. Finally, Justin said, looking almost relieved, "Excuse me, my plan is in its final phase." I didn't understand what he meant by that, but I knew it wasn't good. He was hiding something big. Justin then returned to his study with a creepy smile on his face, leaving me in confusion. Despite my growing suspicion, I had more pressing matters to attend to. I had to go to my parents' house to prepare for my father's funeral. "I'm sorry to trouble you when you're so busy," my mother said as I arrived. "What are you talking about?" "This is the priority," I replied, though my mind was still racing from everything that had happened. During a break in the preparations, my mother casually mentioned, "By the way, didn't Father say to check his study?" "Oh, I almost forgot," I said. "I'll go check it now." I hadn't been in my father's study in quite a while. It was at the end of the first floor, and walking in felt like stepping into another world. I immediately found the envelope my father had mentioned and opened it, my heart pounding. Inside, there was a letter from my father. After reading it, everything clicked. The pieces of the puzzle fell into place, and it all made sense. This was why Justin had been acting the way he had. My father had gathered all of this information for my sake, preparing me for what was to come. There was a handwritten message on the back of the envelope, a message that made my blood run cold. I realized then that I no longer needed to hold back my anger. My hatred toward Justin grew like a fire. I swore I would keep these feelings hidden until the right moment came. The funeral proceeded smoothly. We gave my father a proper send-off, but I knew deep down that this was far from over. Later, my mother called me to gather at my parents' house, where we would open my father's will. Being an only child, it was just my mother, Justin, and me in the room. "Thank you for coming," my mother said, her voice heavy with emotion. "What's happening?" "Today we're going to open Father's will," she said. "When did he prepare that?" I asked, surprised. "Apparently, he prepared it during his hospital stay," my mother explained. The will reading revealed the contents, and it was exactly what I had expected. The family home and half of the estate were given to my mother, and the rest, everything else, was left to me. But there was more. I had inherited the land too. "I wouldn't know what to do with the land," my mother said, her voice soft. "I'm sure you'll put it to good use, Jessica," she added, looking at me with a proud smile. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw Justin barely suppressing a smile. It was almost as if he had been expecting this. The will reading concluded without issue, but my mother suggested we go out to eat. "Sorry, but I'll be heading back," Justin said abruptly. "What? But Mom invited us," I protested. "I don't have a problem with that," Justin replied, his tone flat. "I'm off," he added, leaving without another word. I couldn't believe it. All I could do was sigh. "Sorry, Mom. I think I'll head back too," I said, feeling exhausted. "That might be best, dear," she replied. "We can always have dinner another time." "Sorry. See you later," I said, my voice trailing off as I left. Once I left my parents' house, I immediately followed Justin. He had to be up to something. I didn't trust him. Not anymore. When I got home, Justin was lounging on the sofa as if he owned the place. "What took you so long? What were you doing out there?" he asked with a smug look on his face. "I came straight home," I replied, trying to keep my calm. "Well, sit down," Justin said. "There's something I want to talk about." My gut instinct told me this conversation wouldn't be good, but despite my bad feeling, I sat down anyway. I needed to know what Justin was really up to. Justin started talking with a smirk, as if everything was finally falling into place for him. Finally, it seems like luck is starting to come my way, he said. Now that the old man is dead, it's my turn. Get it? I couldn't believe what I was hearing. So this was his true nature all along. He wasn't sad about my father's passing. Instead, he saw it as an opportunity. Do you even understand what you're saying? I asked, my voice shaking with disbelief. I get it, he replied, his tone casual. I'll be taking the land and the fortune you inherited. Quite a lot, didn't you? You've been waiting for this all along. The words hit me hard. He had been waiting for my father to die, and now he was treating it like some kind of reward. Of course, Justin continued, I couldn't wait for him to pass on. He has no idea what's coming. I was furious. I could never do such a thing. No matter how much you bluff, it's useless here. I sneered, tossing something at me. It was a divorce paper already signed. Pick it up, Justin said coldly. You can't do anything without me, so I'll make good use of your fortune. So give it to me, Jessica Scott. I was stunned, but I couldn't hold back any longer. Still saying that? It's the truth, isn't it? You're useless at home, so I, the skillful one, will take it. He was beyond arrogant, but I refused to back down. What if I refuse? I asked. Are you stupid? Justin laughed cruelly. What other option is there but divorce? I saw it now. This was all an act, a carefully laid plan. Everything I thought was real had been an illusion, and Justin had no idea who he was truly dealing with. What are you doing? Justin asked as I stood up. What do you think? I'm leaving this house, I said, determined. Justin tried to stop me. You'll regret it. That's my line, I said, my voice firm. You're helpless without me. Is that so? I asked, calm despite the storm brewing inside me. I believe your company and mine had deals, right? Justin looked confused. My company? What are you talking about? You're just an employee. You'll see, I said, my tone cold. Oh, and don't worry about the divorce paper. I'll take care of it myself. With that, I left the house, heading straight for the main street. I couldn't waste another minute. The first thing I did was make a call. Yes, can you come right now? I asked urgently. 10 minutes later, I climbed into the limousine that came to pick me up. Where to? The driver asked. For now, the city hall, I replied. Understood. At the city hall, I submitted the divorce papers, already signed in the car. I wanted this over as quickly as possible. I didn't want anything to do with Justin anymore. Afterward, I drove to a certain place. When I decide to do something, I act immediately. It's our family motto. I drove straight to the company and entered the president's office. I sat down in the chair, feeling calm despite everything that had happened. Thank you for having me, I said to President Hansen. I'm Jessica. Sorry for the sudden meeting, but there's something urgent I need to discuss with you. What might that be? President Hansen asked, concerned. The project we've been progressing on, I began. Yes. I know you've entrusted that to Justin, but about that project, it's off. President Hansen looked taken aback. What did you say? Everything, I replied. All current contracts with you will be terminated. That would bankrupt our companies, President Hansen said, his eyes wide with panic. That's unfortunate, I said, but it's due to your employees' actions. President Hansen seemed confused. What do you mean? Please bring Justin to our house tomorrow at 11, I instructed, not letting up. You'll understand then. Goodbye. I hung up the phone, holding no grudge against President Hansen, but I knew this was necessary. I was using him for my revenge against Justin. The next day, I waited in the president's office for Justin and the others to arrive. When they finally did, Justin froze upon seeing me. Welcome, I said, trying not to laugh. Why are you here? Because I'm the president of this company, I replied. I could see Justin's face turning pale. You kept that a secret from President Hansen? Of course, I said. It would have been too troublesome if he knew. Now, about the contract, I continued. Please look at this. I handed over the envelope my father had left me, watching as Justin's expression turned to one of shock as he looked at the contents. Is this true? He asked, his voice trembling. Yes, I said. Everything was researched by my father. Justin, you've done something unforgivable. The documents in the envelope revealed that Justin had been using bribes and illegal methods to secure contracts, all his actions carefully documented. I couldn't even begin to imagine how much time my father had spent gathering all this information. Damn that old man! Justin cursed, his face red with anger. But I have the right to inherit, don't I? It wouldn't be fair to my father otherwise. I looked at him coldly. First off, you have no right to inherit anything, not what I've inherited, and not what my father left me. Justin was dumbfounded. There's supposed to be a division of assets. I know that much. I shook my head. That's where you're wrong. You're not entitled to anything. You should have studied more. I leaned forward, watching as the realization dawned on Justin. Where did I go wrong? He muttered, panic rising in his voice. Your father was the president of a company that passed away under suspicious circumstances, I said. The reason was the cancellation of a deal by a certain company. This company's name was almost identical to ours. Justin's face went white. What? What do you mean? The company you thought was responsible was not, I explained. It was all a mistake. You've been chasing the wrong thing. That's a lie, Justin shot back. My mother told me about it. That can't be true. What if the story you've been told is wrong? I countered. By the way, there's no record of any deal with your father's company in our history. Why would I do all of this? I asked him. You've caused trouble for so many people, and now you need to take full responsibility. Justin looked at President Hansen. Wait a minute, President Hansen. I'll leave the rest to you. I'll address this immediately, President Hansen replied. Goodbye, and don't ever show your face to me again. Afterward, Justin was escorted out of the president's office by President Hansen. I was relieved, but I couldn't help but wonder how my father had figured all of this out. Unfortunately, I would never get the chance to ask him. Not long after, I received a call from President Hansen. I understand, he said. Thank you for handling this. As a result, Justin has been fired. It turns out he had been embezzling company funds for bribes, and they are now preparing to sue him. It seemed like a fair response, but it was only the beginning. Then I received another call. It was Justin. Everything you said was right, he said, almost defeated. I talked to my mother again, and it seems there was a misunderstanding. My father did not leave a suicide note. I see, I said, my voice cold. Can I ask you something? Was encouraging my father to drink also part of your plans? There was silence on the other end of the line. Yes, Justin admitted. I see, I said. Now I'm sorry, he said, but I could hear the desperation in his voice. Your apologies are too late now, I replied, cutting him off. From now on, you're on your own. I understand, he said, his voice hollow. Just before hanging up, I added, and just so you know, I'm not supporting you. This is just sarcasm. Fall into hell quickly. I hung up the phone and deleted all his contact information. I nearly forgot. But then I recalled. The name of his target for retribution had been written in red pen on the back of a picture in Justin's study. Everything had been a mistake from the start. However, to believe that I was likewise a target. As I sat on the couch in the president's office, I recalled what my father had written in the envelope. You are my delight and pride, Jessica. Do as you like. I have faith in you. Such things had never been said to me before. I would give my life to safeguard the business my father left behind, so he may rest in peace in paradise.